Want to expand your speaking and storytelling skills and grow your influence? This is Speakipedia Media, brought to you by Speakipedia.com. I'm your host, Dave Bricker, bringing you straight talk, smart strategies, and amazing stories from visionary speakers and thought leaders. My guest has been speaking for 25 years, and he's been coaching speakers to discover, develop, and deliver their best message for 20 years. And he's been in sales and marketing for longer than that. We all face obstacles in life and business, the economy, personal conflicts, self-doubt, skills caps, and more. Today's guest message is all about how to win anyway. Please help me welcome Rich Hopkins.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here. It's a bright, shiny day here in Denver.
Thanks, Rich. It's a hot, still day here in Miami, but it's good to have you on board. So, you fought quite a battle with a leg that was weakened from a birth defect, and you ultimately elected to just have it amputated. Share that story and tell our listeners why it's such a powerful metaphor for managing other kinds of adversity.
Sure. Well, my birth defect was never really identified in terms of being diagnosed. So they never figured out exactly what was wrong with me. And they tried surgeries on me to help me be able to walk as a kid, but they weren't even sure if they were going to work all the time. So I had 10 surgeries before I was 10 years old, and thankfully I was walking. They kind of told me to stay off of it as much as I could if I wanted to keep it. And I didn't really listen to them all that much. I kind of figured if I'm going to be in a wheelchair someday, I want to at least remember all the things I did when I wasn't. You know, hitting a winning basketball shot, being able to hike up in the mountains. But eventually they were right. At 38 years old in 2006, I woke up one day and I couldn't put any weight on my ankle. Went a couple of weeks, being stubborn, went to the doctor, and they presented me with what was kind of an unthinkable situation. At least I'd never thought of it. I mean, I'd heard of wheelchairs, sure, but not what they wanted me to do. I went another couple of weeks, and then I figured, okay, the doctor that I met with was a below-the-knee amputee himself. And we talked about what his life was like, how his life had changed, and he said it was the best thing he ever did. So that was the approach I took, because everything else I was going to do was at best a temporary fix for a year or two, or it was going to really limit my mobility. So in terms of making a decision to give up something I'd worked so hard to keep, we all find ourselves in those situations. You know, sometimes it's a relationship we don't want to give up on. Sometimes it's a business strategy or, you know, an entire wing of our business that we know is losing money, but it was our idea 20 years ago. But sometimes you have to let something go to get something better. And that's the decision that I made, was to upgrade to what I call my super deluxe robot leg. It enabled me to continue walking, continue being a good father to my 6 kids, so I'm not just sitting around in a wheelchair when I don't have to be. And it gave me a life back to a point. In some ways, I wish I hadn't waited as long as I had to make that decision.
It's a pretty amazing story. So let's jump into one of your themes, and we'll come back because I know it's all woven together. But the idea of winners and losers, that sounds a bit polarized. Are people one or the other? Can you be a winner at sports and a loser at math? If you're a compulsive gambler and you win big at the roulette table, are you still a winner? So dive deeper into what winner and loser mean in terms of the way you speak and teach about those concepts.
Well, winning and losing is polarizing because the world makes it polarizing. You are either a winner or a loser in the eyes of the world. If you have a goal and you don't reach it, you have failed no matter what, because you haven't gotten what you stated you wanted to go get. We're a sports driven world in some ways, and there's only one winner every year. One team wins the Super Bowl. One team wins the championship of anything. But life is not sport. And we lose all the time and we win all the time unless we listen to the world's point of view. Winning anyway is about defining victory for yourself, not thinking in terms of losing, but instead learning. Okay, so I have a goal, I want to accomplish something, and I want to get it done by the end of October. So, what happens if I don't reach that goal in October? Am I a loser? Or am I someone who just hasn't won yet? Now, how can I find victories on the way to that ultimate victory? What have I learned along the way? What have I learned that doesn't work? What have I learned that does work as I try to approach that goal, even though I fail? And once I stop and reassess at that point, I can celebrate what I have done, where I am at this moment. So the world won't let you do that. World says you can't celebrate until you've accomplished it, which leaves us feeling lousy about ourselves, slows our momentum, if not stopping it entirely, and we're so much less likely to ever get to that goal in the future. But if you celebrate and then recalibrate what you're doing, I'm going to change my approach, or maybe I'm going to change the goal altogether because it doesn't serve me anymore, and then move forward again. That's how you live a win anyway life for yourself instead of worrying about whether the world thinks you're winning or not.
So it really comes down to mindset, to self image. If we fail to meet a goal, that helps us define a new goal. We need to see that failure as part of a larger win rather than, or the road to a larger win, rather than see ourselves as losers for not having succeeded.
Right. And that's if you think in terms of failure. There's failure, but there's also just not reaching where you want to go yet. If you think of yourself as a failure, you are creating a mindset that is not going to be helpful. But if you think of yourself as someone who's making progress, you're going to be more likely to keep making progress. It's the terminology that the world has thrown at us that failure is so big a part of our vocabulary.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think there's a lot of people who just beat themselves up over that kind of thing. And I know in my life, I've had some ideas and inventions that I was very excited about it. I developed them. I brought them out into the world, and either the world said, "I don't care, Dave, not what I need," or I just failed to convince the world that they needed an iPod because they weren't asking for it, right? So somewhere in between. But wow, have I learned so much along the way? And I'm all of those things are part of where I am now. Maybe winning is more of a journey than a destination.
Well, you certainly win along the journey. And when you acknowledge that, the journey becomes a lot more fun.
Completely agree. It's really, I think happiness is the same way. People think if I do this and this and this and this and this, then one day I'm going to be happy. It's like, no, it isn't a state you attain. It's all about, wow, I'm loving this journey. It's got its ups and downs. Sometimes I get rained on, sometimes I get cold, but the view is fantastic. And I think, much like winning, happiness is something that needs a lot of reframing. So, Rich, leadership is a focus of your work. And how does leadership connect to this theme of winning and losing?
Well, in terms of leadership, how you lead the people that are following you is crucial. And if you are leading them with that mindset of they're either going to win or lose, they're either succeeding or failing, then you're leading a team that may be doomed to fail. You're putting people in a poor position to succeed because they're living a life that is based on outer judgments instead of inner judgment. Now, yeah, we're all going to have sales goals. We're, if that's what we do, there are certain outside metrics that we have to reach. But what are you doing to reach those? How are you leading your team to go after them? And how are you making them feel about themselves as they do it? If you have a win lose mentality, then they will as well. Your company will have a win lose mentality, and it's not going to serve you in the long run.
So, give an example of the alternative to that. How can a leader steer people around that win lose mentality?
Well, we've gotten a lot better at creating incentives. We'll stick with sales. That's where I've spent most of my life. You have a $50,000 sales goal, but then you've got maybe stair steps along the way, and you can celebrate your victories on the way to 50,000. You don't hit 50,000. Okay. Well, what did you hit? You hit 35. How does that compare to what you did last month? How is that going to change your approach? What did you not do? What did you do well on your way to 35,000? Now, sometimes you're going to have employees that just aren't good salespeople, and you can spend some time coaching them up and working with them to help them win anyway. And oftentimes that'll work, and they will suddenly start reaching their goals in future months. On the other hand, maybe winning anyway for them is getting the heck out of sales. And that'll be a win for you too.
Yeah, and of course, that's a whole other big topic because we're all in sales, whether we know it or not.
Absolutely.
So yes, measuring what you did well instead of just did. It's not all about did you get the ball through the goalposts or not. How far down the field did you get? How many first downs did you get? Because otherwise, it's a 0 or a 1, and that's a hard standard for anybody. And a related topic, and I love this topic that you offer workshops on, is evaluations, performance reviews, sales rankings, etc. And so many organizations make their second tier performers feel like losers during this process. I remember when I was a university teacher and they would call us in for the annual performance review, and it was right out of Rick Lozano's wonderful song, the Performance Review song, which you can look up on YouTube. He's a wonderful speaker, and where the HR person or the department chair says, between you and me, pretty much everyone got a 3 out of 5, right? And they just kind of, it's such a bogus review. It's just demoralizing to work that hard and get jumbled in. Like everybody got a 3. To get a 5, you would have to do all sorts of things that are entirely outside of your job description. You'd have to make anyway. So what are these evaluators, these managers, and ultimately the people responsible for corporate culture doing wrong?
Well, you really have to change your mindset from review to evaluation. Because we have job reviews. Well, how did you do last year? And they'll throw out a bunch of statistics of goals you met and goals you didn't, what you did do and what they perceive you didn't do, as opposed to evaluating what you did do. So this is what you've done. This is the result you have. Good for you on this. And then instead of necessarily saying, stop doing this or being incredibly critical, replacing that with, what if you tried this instead? What if we started moving you in this direction? What if you added this to your routine? It's a matter of yes, and what if we tried? Because if you spend the time being incredibly negative, you're going to end up with a negative result.
Yeah, and it's really the common approach is an adversarial approach between the employee and the evaluator, right? Okay, you're going to tell me everything I did wrong instead of that collaborative cooperative approach. Okay, you didn't hit all your KPIs, but let's look at why. Let's look at the ones you were strong in, and let's see what I can do to help you get to those higher levels. So that obviously is a much more enlightened leadership style, if I'm reading you correctly.
Absolutely. And there's a key in there that I didn't bring up, and that is you really need to create a relationship so that you can evaluate and communicate that evaluation in terms that they're comfortable with. For me, if somebody's evaluating me, I don't necessarily need them to be as kind as somebody else. I've been in the business for 35 years. If I stink, tell me I stink, and then tell me what I can do not to. But not everybody is in the position I'm in, and you'll only know that if you build that relationship so that you can qualify your evaluation style.
I have a friend who is changing employers. He's moving to a new job. And I suggested during the intake interview that he say, look, I understand that the reason you hire employees is to either make you or save you money. Let me know what it is that I can do to quantify my contribution to this company, because what I'd like to do is be in a position to come in and ask you for a raise because I've earned it and it's a small fraction of the money I've generated for you or saved for you during the time that I'm here. And they should be grateful to give that raise on those, but asking for those specific, what do I have to do to get that 5 on my review? What are my KPIs? What are my benchmarks? Because I think so many people go into that employer thinking, oh, I'm so grateful that you hired me. I'm just going to say yes, 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 and do what I'm told. And that's a great way to not rise up in the ranks of an organization.
Yeah, you've got to create expectations from both sides.
So let's talk about winning, losing, and speaking. Now, I would love to be asked this question, but today is your day. So, Rich, what is it about public speaking that grows winners faster than any other force in the universe?
When you allow yourself to speak in public, you're allowing yourself to share who you are and the value you offer with that audience and with every audience you ever appear in front of. And you can't help but win when you are comfortable and vulnerable and honest with the people you're speaking with. Now, that's not necessarily an easy place to get to. It's easier for some than others, but that's what I've spent 25 years doing, learning to do better, and helping other people develop those skills for themselves as well.
Yeah, I love that. And it's fascinating because when we get up in front of an audience, we we speak our piece, we share our thought models, we share our values, and we kind of have to live up to that, right? We can't talk about the value of integrity and go out and lie and cheat to people because it becomes too big a burden to bear, because we are supporting that audience, trying to inspire that audience, and trying to be authentic. So I think another way that people win through speaking is just by finding themselves in a position where they have to walk the walk instead of just talk the talk. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. You're certainly setting yourself up for expectations, so you better deliver.
So let's back up a few steps. Rich, what was your journey into speaking? What called you to the platform?
Well, I'm a guy, and what called me to pretty much anything was a gal. I didn't do much public speaking. I got involved in acting in college because a pretty blonde wanted me to try out for a play with her. So I did. And she didn't get cast, but I did. And in fact, I got the lead. And okay, so shortest relationship ever. But I did drama for the next 5.5 years I was in college, earning my 4-year degree. Then I got involved in Toastmasters because another young lady invited me to her Toastmasters club. And I've ended up being in Toastmasters ever since. Honestly, the best thing I got out of that relationship, that didn't last long, but Toastmasters has. And I really found that I love to get up and speak. And it didn't take me long in Toastmasters to realize that just because I love to speak didn't mean that I was saying anything. And I was very lucky to have a mentor tell me just that I could be a great speaker if I would ever learn to say something. And I have spent all my time trying to make sure that I'm always saying something and not wasting the time of my audience, even if they're, a bunch of Toastmasters that are there specifically to support me. I still need to honor that time. And so I love being able to speak. I love being able to hear others speak and give them feedback, be able to mentor them through the process as they go along.
So, if you're just joining us, you're tuned into Speakipedia Media for aspiring and professional speakers and thought leaders who want to change hearts, minds, and fortunes. My guest today is speaker and marketing strategist Rich Hopkins. So, I am also a longtime Toastmaster, and I've spoken quite a bit on this podcast about the merits of that. I think to myself, I must have seen in my years in Toastmasters 1,500 short speeches, and you can't get that education anywhere else. And you have also spoken about having a drama background, which I have very little of, but I have some of. And that's really a tremendous advantage for speaking. And then you talk about this very important topic of when you speak, have something to say, and especially something to say that serves the audience. And I'm thinking about your own story because you focus on winning, which is a great topic. We all love to win, but there's a big pothole in the road of your journey that you managed to steer around. And that's the dreaded poor me story. And so many aspiring speakers deal with an injury, cancer, divorce, disability, and they rush to the stage to talk about adversity. So, how can we reframe our adversity stories so that they can really serve our audience?
Well, exactly. I've got an adversity story. You made me tell it at the beginning of the podcast, but I don't frame it as an adversity story. I frame it as a victory, which is right in line with winning anyway in general. It doesn't matter how bad your situation is. If you're here now, you have gotten through it to a point or are in the middle of getting through it. What can you do to move forward from there? If you're a speaker and you've got some tremendous adversity that you have faced, you can get a ton of empathy from your audience, but they won't get a message from you. And they'll hear you once and then you're kind of like eating cotton candy. Great, I enjoyed it. Fun, dramatic story, and that's it. But if you could take your story and put your audience in a similar situation, not necessarily physically, but mentally, then they can decide for themselves how they would feel, what they would think in a similar situation, or the better word is parallel. Because when I talk about my leg, giving up something I worked so hard to keep, not everybody, in fact, a very small percentage, can identify with, but they can identify with having to let go of something that they've tried hard to keep, which I mentioned in my keynotes, be they relationships, employees, business plans, their favorite car that they've kept for 40 years. How eh, how can they give something up and not feel like they're losing, but instead find the victory in it moving forward?
Absolutely. Well said. I always counsel people never tell a story until you've stopped bleeding. Don't use the stage as a place to do your therapy and work out your trauma. And Rich, you also coach speakers. And what are some of the most common problems you encounter with speakers, and how do you approach these problems as a coach?
The biggest problem I come across is that everybody has a story they want to tell. They know they want to say it, but they don't necessarily have any clue why we need to hear it. So, my job is to help them really dig into what that story is and how it can change their audience, how they can use that story and other stories in their life to build up to an overall theme that gives the audience something to hang on to and something to use after they've listened to you.
So there's also this idea people see us on the platform and they think, wow, you're an experienced speaker, you're there. And of course, we all keep growing our craft. Yo-Yo Ma continues to practice the cello. It's not like, oh, I'm here now, I don't have to practice anymore, right? We continue to grow. And you mentioned Toastmasters, and of course, I do the same thing. Every week I'm at my Toastmasters chapter and working on new things, challenging myself, and trying to get that audience perspective. Those evaluations are very important, sometimes more important than the ones I get from my professional speaker friends, because they're not the ones in the real audience. So, what else do you do to continue to grow as a presenter?
Well, one of the things I do is I go on podcasts like this. Nothing like impromptu speaking and trying to make sure that you can sound halfway intelligent when talking about yourself. But I'm still in Toastmasters. I'm a member of two clubs, and I probably give 5 to 6 speeches a month, either in my clubs or visiting other clubs virtually. Yesterday night, I was on a panel. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing a one on one interview with a group in District 71, which I think is Australia, somewhere down there. Just continuing to be in the environment, whether you're speaking or hearing other speakers, helps you uh, sharpen that saw because you're either developing it for yourself or you're hearing it for somebody else and thinking, I liked what they did, or what if they tried this, and how can I possibly apply that to what I'm doing?
Yes, and my friend Bruce Turkel, who's a Hall of Fame speaker in NSA, his saying is, if you want to speak more, speak more. And that certainly applies to the business side of things. Get out, speak more, people will see you, you'll have more opportunities to get paid. Take those freebie gigs, speak at those Rotary clubs, whatever. But then the other side of it is speak at speak at those Toastmasters meetings, things like that. Speak every chance you get to stand up. Stand up at a networking event and give an announcement. Speak, speak, speak. That's how you get better. It's the same way you get to Carnegie Hall, right? Practice, practice, practice.
Well, for those that aren't in Toastmasters, when you get into Toastmasters, get involved in the contest because it gives you a chance to speak with more at stake. And if you win, you go to a higher level, and every higher level you go to has bigger and different audiences, and you get to repeat the same material if you choose, which gives you an opportunity to work on material. And what a better environment to be able to do that in than one that is objectively supportive with not a whole lot at stake. I've been doing that's one of the main reasons I've stayed in Toastmasters is just to compete every year and chase that world championship trophy.
And at the same time, I think it's really important because I've done a lot of Toastmasters contests, and I've found that when you get into those higher levels, sometimes you don't know who the judges are. Well, you definitely don't know who they are, but you don't know what they're smoking or what they like. And I mean, I remember I got to the top of the comedy contest, the humorous speech contest, and then at the end I didn't place, and two of the people who won were doing bathroom humor, which shouldn't have even been accepted. So, but you know what? I felt that I wrote something clever and did a good performance. So, above all, compete with yourself, because we get back into this winners and losers conversation where if some random judge who can't tell a good speech from the phone book happens to not place you in the contest, that doesn't mean you did a lousy job. It means they did a lousy job. And that's okay. As long as you give it your best, the audience isn't always going to appreciate your best efforts. And that's okay.
I totally get that, Dave. I've competed in over 150 contests. I have won some I shouldn't have. I have lost some I shouldn't have. And ultimately, I've won them all because I learned something either about my speech, about how I'm approaching it, or in the early years when I wasn't so much a win anyway guy, I learned something about myself.
Yeah, it's just great getting in front of getting in front of an audience and receiving an evaluation. Even if you disagree with the evaluation, it's something you can bounce off of. It's a very important experience, and it's not one that you can find anywhere else.
Just the word of the day is discernment.
So, aside from Toastmasters, some of our listeners are new to the speaking game. And what advice can you offer? What shortcut? Wow, I can't talk today. What shortcuts can they take? And when does it make more sense to take that long scenic route?
What's the purpose of you going out and speaking? That's the number one question you have to ask yourself. Are you just wanting to go out and share your story and inspire people? Are you wanting to represent a business you're running? Those are typically the top two reasons we go out and speak. Others are you want to be a better public speaker because you want to speak well at work, in meetings, be able to talk to your boss and ask for that raise. The If you don't need to be great immediately, join Toastmasters because you'll be able to take that long winding road. If you need to be great in a month because your boss gave you a PowerPoint deck and said, you're going to this convention and you're representing us, get a coach. And I would recommend getting a coach regardless, and then finding a way to get out and speak to the low-hanging fruit opportunities out there, the thousands of meetings that happen every single day, morning, noon, and night, Rotary, Lions, etc. And it's a whole different podcast. You get a free chicken dinner or free eggs and bacon in the morning, and you get a chance to speak for 20 minutes. And that helps you improve. Now you combine getting out there, getting a coach, and Toastmasters. That's probably your absolute fastest track to success before taking the next big jump to NSA.
So, thanks for that advice. And now, tell us a little bit about the various programs you offer. And I love how they're named: Win Anyway, Lead Anyway, Speak Anyway, and Evaluate Anyway. So, you've got a keynote, you've got some breakout sessions. What is that constellation of Rich Hopkins offerings?
Well, the Win Anyway keynote is my flagship keynote. I talk about my own situation. I talk about some third-party folks that have had some experiences where the world has told them they just aren't living up to what they said they would live up to, or they're facing situations they can't control, and yet they have found a way to win anyway. You know, some of these people are people I've known for 40 years. Others are my kids who, we learn so much from our kids. And I take that and I turn those stories into something that I apply to whatever business I happen to be working with at the time from stage. You can see a version of that in my TEDx. When you start talking about speaking anyway, that's more of a training session to help companies improve their employees' speaking skills, overall presentation skills. Evaluate anyway is often for Toastmasters groups to help them become better evaluators. But as we talked about today, we need to be better evaluators in the corporate world. And I have a version of Evaluate Anyway for the corporate world as well. And leading anyway, I mean, let's face it, it's about winning anyway from a higher level and leading other people to live their win anyway life, both for themselves and for you and your company that you are a leader within.
So thanks for sharing those. Thanks for sharing those programs, and I hope I can catch up with you at an event and hear your presentations. So where can our listeners discover more about you?
Well, they can go to richhopkins.com, or they can go to speakanddeliver.com, or they can just Google Rich Hopkins speaker, and everywhere I am will pretty much come up.
Well, that's certainly easy enough. Rich Hopkins, thank you so much for being my guest today. I'm Dave Bricker, inviting you to explore the world's most comprehensive resource for speakers and storytellers at Speakipedia.com. If you're watching this on social media video, please love, subscribe, share your comments. And if you're listening to the podcast, keep your hands on the wheel, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of Speakipedia Media.